Welcome to Understanding Wisconsin School Fund Accounting and Fund Balances. In this session, we will discuss the funds, account elements, account structure, and the fund balance accounts that comprise the Wisconsin Uniform Financial Accounting Requirement System, referred to as WFR. Also, we will discuss how cash flow affects the fund balance throughout the fiscal year. WFR. No, it's not a dog bark sound. Well, okay, it sounds like it. But actually, it's the acronym for the Wisconsin Public School Account Coding Structure, the Wisconsin Uniform Financial Accounting Requirements System, WFR. Governments, such as school districts, usually organize their accounting systems on a fund basis. A fund is a separate set of accounting records, segregated for the purpose of carrying on an activity established for accountability purposes to demonstrate that financial resources are being used only for permitted purposes. Think of a fund as a self-contained box into which is put everything pertaining to that fund. Remember to think of a fund like a box into which we put the balance sheet. The balance sheet consists of assets, liabilities, and fund balances, along with a series of revenue and expenditure accounts. The purpose of these accounts is to record and tell the story of what is going on in that specific fund. 6 elements comprise the WFR account structure. The first element is a 2-digit fund number. The second element tags the account as an expenditure with an E, or revenue with an R, or asset using an A, liability with L, or equity with Q. The third element describes the location in which the account activity is being used. The fourth element describes object of the activity, or what is being described. The fifth element describes the function of the activity, or where within the educational plan the item or activity is being used. The sixth and final element describes a project number, like a state or federal project, if applicable. Otherwise, it's just 3 zeros. Listed here are funds used in Wisconsin. The main operating fund is the General Fund, Fund 10. Fund 27 is a special education fund, and along with Fund 50, the Food Service Fund, is found in almost all districts. At some point in their history, school districts borrow money for construction or to increase the revenue limit. When this occurs, such activity is recorded in one of the debt service funds of the Fund 30 series. If construction or remodeling is involved in such borrowing, the construction costs are recorded in the Capital Projects Fund somewhere in the Series 40. The basic concept for location numbering is easy to follow. Just think of a student's progress through the grades. The difference between a middle school and a junior high is the 9th grade. If a school that is not a high school has in it a 9th grade, it's a junior high. For example, if a school has grades 7, 8, and 9, it is a junior high. If that same school has grades 6 to 8, or only 7 and 8, but the 9th grade is located at the high school, then that school is a middle school. Listed here are the major source codes for revenue. WFR is a hierarchical system, so while the major source 100 is a summary of all transfers, the detailed source 127 identifies a transfer to Fund 27. That concept is followed throughout WFR. While activity in all major source codes is common, the most heavily used source codes are 200 local sources, 300 interdistrict payments within Wisconsin, 600 state sources, and 700 federal sources. Listed here are the major object codes of WOFR. These codes describe what the activity or item is being used for. Salaries and benefits, purchase services, non-capital equipment, and capital equipment are all heavily used objects. Again, these objects are major objects that summarize or total activity. For example, 400 non-capital equipment is broken down to 410 to describe supplies, and finally to 411 to describe an office supply item like a pen. The next three slides list function codes. These codes describe where an activity or item is being used. Undifferentiated describes curricular programs at the elementary level that combine different curriculum during the instruction day. Regular curriculum describes specific course activity. An aid to remembering these is that they appear alphabetically in the number sequence. In the previous slide, the 100,000 instruction series identifies functional activity that is instructional, one involving the teacher-student face-to-face. This 200,000 series identifies services that directly support instruction. Such activities include pupil services, the instruction of specific staff services, general administration like school board and superintendent, school building administration like that of the principal, business administration like buildings and grounds, transportation, fiscal activity, central services like receiving and purchasing, insurance and judgment like business insurances, debt service involving principal and interest of activities of the ongoing operational activities, and then just general catch-all of other support services that may not be included in the previous functions. The 300,000 function shown here is used exclusively for community service and is linked to the 80 Fund, Community Services. The 400,000 function is used to record non-program transactions. And the 500,000 function is used only with revenue accounts. Shown here is a partial list of assets. DPI, the Department of Public Instruction, uses B in the second element to identify the account as a balance sheet account and relies on the function number to distinguish between assets, the 700,000 series, liabilities, the 800,000 series, and equity, the 900,000 series. Local districts often use L, E, and Q instead of just B. However, they do convert to the B when submitting data to the DPI. This partial list of liabilities shows often used 800,000 accounts. The Governmental Accounting Standards Board, GASB, has prescribed 5 standardized fund equity accounts, which the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction has adopted. 4 of these accounts are what we call reserved. The last is unreserved. Of the first 4 reserved accounts, 93500 is listed as a non-spendable fund balance. These categorize items such as prepaid expenses and inventory. 936000 describes restricted fund balance. These are for activities like self-funded insurance, contracts, debt, or legal restrictions. 937000 is a committed fund balance. It has to be established by a formal board action, become part of the budget. It's restricted for a specific use. It could be a construction project, or it could be setting aside money for something in the future. 938000 is an assigned fund balance. It too needs to be assigned by the board. It does not necessarily mean the need to have such a formal action, but still needs to have board assignment. And it could include capital projects and different budgeted activities. The last item on this list is unreserved. 939000, the unassigned fund balance. This typically combines all other activity that has not been described within the first four reserved accounts. A DPI lets the local school districts break this 93900 further down. And the next slide we will discuss that. This 939000 account has been broken into 5 other subordinate accounts. 100 being revenue stabilization. This is what we might call a rainy day fund. The 939200 is for our working capital or cash flow. This is where most of the money that is not used for the reserved activity will be found. 939300 is an account used for contingencies or circumstances or situations that could result in loss. There could be activities that the district is involved in that it knows it faces some circumstances in which it needs to set aside funds. 939400 is an account which is used for emergencies, unplanned or unexpected loss, or acts of God. A school district may be located in a floodplain or in other areas where it oftentimes encounters tornadoes or flood loss or hail damage or other activities, and they may set aside monies there for those emergency purposes. If in all other situations the money that is left in a fund balance is not found a specific purpose for categorization, it's left in 939900 other, which means that money has not been identified for any specific use. A fund balance is created or increased when fund revenues exceed fund expenditures for a fiscal period. Correspondingly, a fund's balance is decreased when fund expenditures exceed fund revenues. A fund balance is often comprised of inventory, prepaid expenses, cash, and other items. Fund balance in itself as a whole is not cash. There is a portion of fund balance which is cash, and the purpose of that is for cash flow. Cash flow is used to pay our bills each month. This table shows the monthly cash flow for 3 fiscal years. While districts may vary considerably in Wisconsin, this table is typical in that cash flow low points occur in November and May. The data on the right shows cash infusion. As noted, state aid payments are spread throughout the year, with larger amounts not coming until January. This graph shows the previous data overlaid with a table of cash infusion dates. You can easily see the low points occurring at the end of November and at the end of May. And you'll notice there's no influx of cash in those months. In fact, we begin the school year on July 1st and receive little money until December, January, and February. Because the fund balance is increased when revenue is received or decreased when expenditures are made, a district's operating fund balance changes as much as daily. However, with respect to a district's fiscal health, the fund balance is expressed and evaluated as of June 30th throughout the state of Wisconsin, the final day of the fiscal year. Thank you for watching this tutorial. I hope you found it informative.